Hey everyone, welcome to the Lens of Morality podcast, where we discuss controversial topics with our lens of morality. I'm your host today, Arsul, and we have Mo, Anik, and Haroon here to discuss a very controversial topic in today's day and age, which is freedom of speech. So I thought what we could try is just starting by going around and asking, what does freedom of speech mean to you? So, Mo, what does that mean to you? Can you describe that in one sentence? What does it mean to you?
I think freedom of speech means me being able to give my opinion without fearing any repercussion from the government or any individual who I'm giving my opinion to.
Okay, that's good. Anik, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, more like same thing, but like I think it's being able to in public tell your dislikes and likes about a certain topic without having the fear of facing consequences. But in this day and age, it's really tricky, right? It can turn into hate speech
Right.
very soon, but we'll get into that after.
Yeah, and finally, Haroon, in a sentence, how would you describe freedom of speech and what does it mean to you?
Yeah, I think the guys hit the points, but only thing I'll add is oftentimes when we don't express ourselves is, yes, there's repercussions always or sometimes, but also building resentment between people, right? And there should be a certain limitation as to how far we can go with that, to the point where we don't offend the other person to get a repercussion. But even to the point.
That's never gonna happen.
Okay.
We'll get into that.
How about
I
this?
just I wanted
Let me
to
rephrase it.
just
It could
phrase
be
it how you
it could
want.
be
We'll get
to
into
a
it.
point where, yes, you're always gonna offend someone, but it shouldn't be that.
Okay, you know what? Let's get into it. Do I have the right to offend someone?
I think in an ideal world,
Yeah.
hate speech should be okay.
100%.
I think
Yeah.
it should be
100%.
okay to offend whoever you want, however you want, because people should have this much courage or be able to listen
Okay.
to someone's opinion.
Let me
but we
play.
don't live in an ideal world, though. That I want to say that too.
Yeah, we don't live in an ideal world.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Let's say I want to express that the views of, let's say something extreme like the KKK, white nationalism, let's just
Right.
say, right? Let's say I wanna go around expressing that view, right? Now that view could incite someone
Right.
to do, let's say, racist things, right?
Right.
So would you guys allow that in your ideal world?
So I think okay,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, actually, if you're putting it in that perspective, where yes, when you become sort of an organization and you're now promoting it, whereas just as an individual you're voicing your opinion, it's different, because then you have influence on other people. You'll get people who go out and act on those views rather than just it being an opinion of an individual. But that's just the very basic sense of it. But I think Mo had something to say.
But I think that in an ideal world it should be okay, because like he's saying, people act upon it if you listen to one of your leaders saying something and go to an extreme. But in an ideal world that won't happen. People will know that this is an opinion and we're just having a discussion. We're just doing a political rallying behind a cause that we feel about.
Right.
But the problem is that if someone like KKK would say something and one of the person who's listening to it would go to an extreme and actually do an act of violence against a certain group of people just through listening to whoever someone idolizes. So that's why I think it becomes very important that how you define hate speech and where do you draw the line that like this is freedom of speech but this is hate speech and it should not be okay. Even though I was reading one of the judgments, KKK, when they were making these speeches, the Supreme Court said that because it's political speech, it's okay. Even though it contains hate speech, it should be allowed as long as it's political speech and no violence is coming out of it.
Yeah, and hate speech, it's protected by the First Amendment in US. But like for me, it's like in this day and age, I can have the freedom of speech, but like think about it. We can. Last week we discussed about the abortion, and it is a sensitive topic, right? And one of the discussions that we had was that okay, if we put it, I think we have to be okay with us being targeted You know, and social media it's a very powerful.
Right.
Uh,
So then that's a great point, and then the question we'll come back to is: do we really have freedom of speech?
We don't. We clearly don't, right? That's not a question that's hard to answer because look at how many limitations we have. Can I openly talk about certain topics without?
Okay, let's get into that too. Which topic can you not talk about?
Let's. For the very obvious one, the LGBTQ. Can I talk about it in a negative way? If somebody wanted to, like, can they talk about it in a negative way? Can people deny the Holocaust? There are countries who have laws against, clearly saying that if you deny the Holocaust, and that's not even hate speech, right? That's like just very minimal freedom of speech. Of can I even
No,
deny?
I think it is hate speech. I
think
think
that's hate speech
the
as well.
problem is that, for example,
Okay.
with Holocaust, it leads to anti-Semitism. It leads to people going to the Jewish community
Uh-huh.
and doing things violent.
Yeah, it incites violence.
Incites violence, exactly.
There's
So it is
probability
hate speech.
that
Of
if
course, so
you're-
that's where the barrier would come, right? Like
here,
I don't.
let me play devil's advocate.
Okay.
In those instances, it can incite violence, but it's not a direct call to violence, right? It is you questioning things and asking questions, right? And just like posing those arguments, right? Which could lead someone to believe that, racism, anti-Semitism, these things are correct. But wouldn't you rather have the freedom of ideas beat that argument as opposed to censoring the argument?
Yeah, and also, sorry, I want to clarify why it's not hate speech. It's like I'm not saying anything negative, but I'm just saying I don't know if it happened or not. Can you, like, maybe somebody who's saying that maybe needs to be educated, maybe they need
No,
to
but
see
there's
certain evidence.
results of what you say, right? The result of that is that people are going to.
That's what I'm agreeing on. Like that comes down to the tolerance of people, right?
Exactly.
So the same thing happened, or similar thing happened, where in France there was the cartoons drawn of the Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and what happened as a result of that? It incited individuals to act on that, and that repercussion is what would stop you.
Right.
But generally, should a government?
So you think that's okay to censor the?
Censor what?
Islamophobic things
Yeah.
or hatred against, anti-Semitic.
So let's use the like your Holocaust example versus like the example of like the images of Prophet Muhammad, right? Would you censor both or censor neither, or censor one and not the other?
So definitely not one and not the other, because if we come to an agreement that there are certain things that cannot be and can be talked about, then you impose them on both things, right? It doesn't have to be one or the other. That would be hypocritical.
Right. But I think what we are saying is that freedom of speech works perfectly if your society is educated in a way that it should be. If it's not, then you have to put some constraints on it.
Yeah, and human beings are very emotional
Yeah.
beings, right? Like, like whenever there is a sensitive topic, think it from the country's perspective. Now they have to deploy the resources, right? If someone's having a peaceful protest, right? For example, recently Israel, Palestine, the country has to send the police officers using their resources to make sure the violence doesn't happen,
Right.
because probability is the violence will happen
Because emotions are high.
because emotions are high, right? So I think we live in this delusional world where we say, in Canada, for example, we have freedom of speech. I can talk about a controversial topic and tomorrow I can get fired. It's just
That's
the
right.
reality.
Yes, of course, and
So that's what it comes down to. Governments can give you freedom of speech, but when you work for a private organization, the employer cannot. Like, I can say anything about the Prime Minister in Canada. No one's gonna say anything to me.
at the
no one's gonna
moment,
be on
yes, you can say that.
At the moment, at the very least, right? But if I go same and talk poorly about my employer in any negative way, like as an organization or as a CEO, let's just say, as a lead, I could get fired for that.
Yeah, no,
right?
I'm not.
No, but that's not freedom of speech. Like, you cannot, even if you have freedom of speech, you cannot just slander someone.
Yeah.
And expect
No,
to
not
get away
slander
with it.
someone, but okay, let's just say I said something about the company I work for that I learned internally was a negative thing about the company.
But
Company
then
can
again,
fire
for
me for that.
example, you can get fired because you have agreements with that company that I won't say that.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. Like, it's okay in certain situations, and it's not in certain, right? Like, one, that's an
So
organization.
we're talking about in the public sphere versus the private sphere.
Right.
When you're in a corporation, in
Yeah.
any private company, you're now in the private sphere. So you're ruled and governed by a different set of rules, right?
100%. But now
So, but
let's
in the
look at
public sphere,
now,
you're governed by, federal laws, right?
Right.
And in the past, the federal laws were like freedom of speech. You can pretty
Right.
much say whatever you want
Right.
with limited repercussions. But
Mhm.
recently, things have changed.
Yeah.
Particularly as we were saying, like relating to things you might say online, right?
Mhm.
One good thing that comes to mind that's relevant right now is something called Bill C-63, which at the moment aims to prosecute hate crimes online. So I'm not sure what you guys think about that, but my personal opinion on something like that would be like, you shouldn't prosecute people for what they say online. You should be able to say whatever you want, as long as it's not a direct call to violence, and as long as you're not telling people to harm themselves or something like that. Otherwise, I think you should be able to say what you want.
But we start differentiating online from in person, but in reality, we
I don't
live in a world which
differentiate-
is so
I don't
connected, right?
differentiate online from in person. I think they should be the exact same.
They should be exactly the same. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
But also, just before we move on from that point about private versus public, in the private sector, like I was giving the example where you say something about your employer or about the organization, I can understand there could be limitations to what you can say because you're contractually obligated to whatever. But if I'm talking about something which is nothing to do with the organization, that I should then feel like I should have the right to freely speak about it because the government or the governing body doesn't say anything to me about it. Why am I then being persecuted or at the risk of losing my job?
Again, I think that becomes more of a, like a private issue. As Mo said, like if, for example, you work in a company and you say that, okay, I've actually witnessed that, they're against women's rights. You say that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you put that review on Glassdoor, right?
Of course.
Right.
That's
Now,
once again, in that example, I'm directly targeting the organization, but I'm
let
giving
me
an
finish my
example.
thought. Let me finish my thought.
Okay.
So now you've publicized that this company is against women's rights, right?
Mhm.
Everyone can view that from the company's perspective, and if you're still employed there, they have the right to, put like a libel or a slander case against you.
As for proof.
Ask for proof, right?
Right.
So to make sure that like the other people don't view that as a truthful statement.
Mhm.
So if, let's say, by doing that you are out of a job, I think that's totally okay.
100%. Once again, in that example, you're going against the organization's image or whatever, right? But I'm talking about in a situation where, say, I'm a supporter of a certain cause, and there are examples of that right now, right? The Palestinian issue. Can I openly support Palestine and say, what my views are on it?
Yeah,
Of course
exactly.
you can.
You
cannot.
No, you. Of course you can.
Of course you can. What
But
do you mean?
again, there
You
are
risk losing your
consequences.
job, and we've seen people on social media who talked about it and
Yeah,
they've lost their job.
100%, 100%.
They have, yeah, okay.
And it has nothing to do with the organization directly, and the government doesn't
Yeah.
say anything to me about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? But I still risk losing my job. So do I really have freedom of speech?
Yeah,
or not?
I agree with
Exactly.
Arun. I don't think you can openly say what you want
Yeah.
about any political issue, whether it be Palestine, whether it be Ukraine, Afghanistan, Iraq, like
Yeah, exactly. Which is why
any of these things you can't really state your honest opinion, except on Lens of Morality where we do say the honest opinions. You can't really say your honest opinion because you do have fear of repercussions, and the current repercussions are being cancelled, right? That's one repercussion. Being fired is another one,
Mhm.
right? But does that mean that we have lost all speech,
Of
all
course
freedom of
not.
speech?
That's what I'm saying. That I think that if you're right. Maybe you cannot 100% say what you believe in some issues,
Mhm.
but you can say that I don't have freedom of speech. You can still, in a lot of the cases, you can still say a lot and get away with it. No one's going to come after you if you, for example, if you make a tweet about Palestine today. It's not like you're gonna go to work tomorrow and they'll be like, and
But
that's
that's
what
that's
happened.
because Haroon is not influential enough.
no,
The
even
instant
I
Haroon
think
gets
even
influential enough
even
from
then,
this podcast.
from this podcast, yes.
even if you're influential, if you say about this topic, if you say your opinion in a particular way, I think you will get away with it. If you say
But see, why does it have to be filtered to make it look
Right,
That's a
nice?
good question. Why does it have to be
I-
filtered?
Yeah,
I-
right. That's not me speaking my mind. That's
Yeah.
not freedom of speech
right,
anymore,
I
right?
think what people are doing right now is interpreting hate speech in regards to this issue. For example, they would say that if you were saying XYZ thing about this topic, you're promoting hate speech. I'm not saying it is hate speech, but that's what they're using right now.
How is it hate speech?
But it's an imperfect solution that we have, right?
Right.
Like that's why I feel like, you know, we don't really have freedom of speech because repercussions are always there. And he's right. Right now, an ordinary person can say it. He might just not be in someone's radar. But when that person
Yeah, when you
does
get on the
become
radar,
or is seen in the radar, I can guarantee you the big and the mighty will make sure that there are repercussions. Openly about the Palestine thing, right? When the initial October 7th thing took place, and when Israel initially, you know, had a response, openly, like we saw a lot of professors in Harvard that publicly said that, you know, like students that still support Palestine, we're gonna make sure that they don't get jobs.
Yeah.
And you know, like
But is that freedom of speech?
So
Yeah,
once again,
it's-
once again, that them the
the
professor
big
saying
and
that.
the big and the
So-
mighty have the freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Okay, but
That's-
if it
that's
does, let's just say okay.
That, honestly, that will be hovering into the you know, workplace discrimination territory.
Mm.
Like you can't hire someone based off their skin tone, based off their religion and stuff like that. It has to be based off their credentials and
Right.
things like that, right?
Okay, but just want to add to that, like I'm okay with professors saying whatever they want online, that we're gonna make sure that, because that's an individual to me. But as soon as that has like real ramifications where the students actually cannot get jobs as a result of that, or they actively go out and make sure that then should there be repercussions for those professors? And also,
No,
the university as an
That's
organization,
discrimination, right?
huh?
If they're not able to get a job, that's just discrimination, right? That's a
Right.
different
Is it
topic.
though? That's a good question. Is it discrimination or is it, for example, like, let's say I'm doing job interviews and you know the job that I have is like journalism or something, and like a newspaper, and my newspaper is a pro-Palestine newspaper. Let's just assume, right? And in those cases, I would be just quite literally discriminating and hiring pro-Palestinian
Right.
journalists, right?
Right.
But is that discrimination? I don't think that's discrimination.
No,
that's you hiring
No,
based
but
off
if,
what your
if,
criteria
if you're
is.
an engineer and you're not being hired because of your views on Palestine, that's discrimination, right?
Yeah.
That is, but I think that's really hard to prove, right?
Right.
Well-
I think that's too hard to prove, and
No, of course, I'm
I think nobody is gonna outright say, based on your view of Israel Palestine, that I'm gonna not hire you.
No,
right?
I'm just saying it should not happen. I'm not saying like if we can prove it or not.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think now's a good time to kind of state like what is your opinion, and I'm curious to see what is your stance on freedom of speech. Should it be allowed? Should it not? Or where?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's frame this out. Okay. You know, I'll go first. My view on freedom of speech is, you know, I'm a kind of a freedom of speech absolutist. So I think we should be allowed to say whatever we want, whenever we want, with the exceptions of inciting violence, which is I believe to be a direct incitation of violence. So not me saying, assuming like let's say something about like KKK or something like that, and then that saying I support that, and then that leads to violence later on. That's not a direct call. That's like a perspective, and then someone else could do that, right? But if I was to directly say, hey, you know what, I want you to murder this person, that's a direct call to violence. So I think that should be forbidden. But otherwise, I think any speech is fine, including what we generically today define as hate speech. I think that should be permissible in all sense of form, and I personally believe that the freedom and competition of ideas will do a good enough job to beat those ideas, and I personally believe that's the best way to do it. It's not a perfect solution, but I think that is the solution that I would put forth.
I think freedom of speech obviously has to be there, but I do believe that there is constraints to what you can say. I do believe that hate speech in certain conditions or certain areas should not be permitted. I think that if you're
But what would you define as the hate
so, for
speech?
example, saying something anti-Semitic, they're saying something against Muslims, not just saying something against Muslim, but saying something which you know will get a reaction. Saying something
Ooh,
about
okay.
the Jewish history which you know will get a reaction.
Okay, but
That's
let's
very subjective.
Yeah, it's
For
very subjective,
example,
and there's a slippery slope here.
yeah,
Very
and
slippery slope.
right now,
Yeah.
Black Lives Matter.
Right.
It's you would think that a lot of people support it, but there are areas in U.S. where Black Lives Matter. It's a very taboo subject.
Yeah, a
Right?
lot
So-
of places in the
So
US.
right now, 10 years ago, probably if somebody wanted to talk about it, they wouldn't have that much support.
Hmm.
So it's very subjective, is what you're saying that So I think that changes with time.
Right, of course it does. It does change with time. I just think that it's you saying something you should have some responsibility of what you're saying. I do believe in freedom of speech in general. But I just think that with time you have to see what are the alienated communities, and if you're not doing anything to address those issues of those communities, at least not put fire to those issues.
Yeah. Just curious, if I was to say that I don't think slavery happened,
Right.
do you think that's okay?
To question that, 100%, I think it's okay.
Yeah, like
So why is it okay to question that, but not the Holocaust?
No, I think
I think you should be able to question everything. You should ask these two. These two are the.
I think there should be court of laws where people can take you and ask you that you're saying slavery didn't happen. Tell us why.
Okay, let's say
No,
you
I'm
go to
just
the
saying
court
we're
of
talking
law.
about freedom of speech.
Anytime you go to the court of law, there's a punishment. What would be the
Right.
punishment?
Probably some fine.
Okay, so a fine for having a certain opinion.
Not an opinion, a wrong, opinion which is factually incorrect.
How do you determine
So
what is
it's just
factually
fine for
correct?
So,
basically
for
being
example-
ignorant.
Okay, let's say I'm gonna say
So I can't just go around and say
I
that.
don't think the theory of gravity is correct. I think there's no
but
gravity.
look, there's things that is
Someone
not,
would say that's
no.
factually correct.
No, that's
Another
there
person
are
would say
things which
it's
are
factually
not,
wrong.
which is not hurting anyone. There are things which are like, for
I'm sure
example,
some scientist has
Holocaust.
heard about it.
Yeah. How
Holocaust
did-
deniers are
Who is that hurting?
a huge group of people who
It's
have gone
how can opinion hurt someone?
because they have suffered millions of people in that.
Okay, then can I bring this over to like the fact that what's happening in Palestine? It's hurting a lot of people that one, they're not able to publicly talk about it. It's
No, I
bothering
think
them.
I think they should be able to talk about it.
Right.
So in one case you think you should be able to talk
No,
about
I
it.
think
In another case you
almost
think
I think in almost
yeah,
all
let's
cases.
find that line. Let's
I think
find
in
that
almost
line.
all
right?
cases
Like-
you should
But-
be able
but-
to talk
okay,
about
yeah,
it
so I
unless
think
what
he's
you are
right.
saying can incite violence, even though it's not a direct. Because even if it's not a direct.
But that's that.
call
So
to
the reason I
incite-
disagree with you is because it's a perspective, right? Anybody can go around saying, "Oh, you know what? This offends me, so this is inciting
think
violence to others," right?
right.
So that's that one person's perspective, whereas another person might have a vastly different perspective.
For example,
so,
you cannot-
so now you're making laws based off people's feelings, and that is the last thing that I want to do. I want to make laws based off facts, not
But
feelings.
if you're in a big crowd, can you say something which you know will cause such a disturbance that people might die?
You're gonna unless if it's a direct.
No, you're not directly saying kill someone. You're just
Like
you're
what?
in a
Give me an
mob.
example.
You're in a mob or something, and you
Yeah, if you're not- if
you
you-
shout that there's this guy with a gun or something. You're not directly inciting violence. You're just saying something out loud, which is going to cause such a disturbance that people might get killed there.
So you're saying.
Should be allowed to do that or no?
So you're saying if someone says there's a gun here,
Not
kill that
gun,
person?
no, you're not saying kill that person. You just shout something which people will start running around. It's gonna cause disturbance and people might die. There's 1 million people
Okay.
out in protest.
Okay.
Should you be allowed to say that?
I think it would depend on what you said. If you said,
No, whatever
No,
you say, it
throw-
causes disturbance. That people start running
Yeah,
around.
let's just
and
say,
killing.
you said something and it caused a disturbance, and as a result, some people died.
Yeah, 10 people
Is
are
that
gonna
allowed?
die.
Is that okay?
You're not directly inciting violence. You're just being stupid.
that's a good question.
No, but that's one. It's a very specific example. And let's just say right now, I'm sitting in my room. I'm sitting in front of a mic right now. Can I say certain things? And it's not like there's a crowd out there, but it's definitely gonna offend people. In that situation, can I say it?
I think
Because if we're looking at specific examples, then this is a very specific
I think in
example.
an ideal world you should be allowed to say
Yeah,
that.
but let's talk about
where-
real world.
In the real
Yeah.
world, the thing is that
No, fine. Let's get back to most question. Let's just touch on it.
No.
And
Arsel's curious. Let's okay. Go
yeah,
ahead.
no. I do want to explore that. So I would need an exact situation, but if something after a statement is made if that statement is so provocative that it causes someone to do violence.
No, it's not provocative at all. It's just not true.
Yeah, like
It's not provocative.
Okay, define the scenario, and I will tell you if I
So,
agree.
so look
Define
at
it.
examples of like those protests that were happening for Palestine. Let's just say somebody comes out with a magnaphone there and says, "Hey, somebody's got a bomb,"
Yeah.
and then suddenly it causes panic amongst the people there, and
Mhm.
people from both sides start to panic, and then there's a reaction that happens as a result of it because it's an unfactual statement,
Right.
and now you've incited violence as a result of it. Should that be okay or not?
Yeah. Okay. I think in that case that's probably not
Yeah.
should not be allowed.
Yeah.
Because that could, in fact, that I would say that did incite some violence because
No,
you're
it's
saying-
not. It doesn't. It's so.
It does. I
No,
think it
it's
does.
not a direct call to violence.
It's
at
not a
all.
direct
but-
call to violence,
no,
but
it's
it's
it did inside the so
It did result in
so
violence.
then any controversial topic you don't have the right because chances are
No,
They will
I
incite
think in
violence.
this, like, it's like saying, you know, you're at an angry mob, and then in that angry mob you go around to someone's house, and then you're like, let's get him.
Mm.
Then that's a call to violence. And I think
that's
that's
not
a
really
similar.
freedom of speech. That's an
Yeah.
action being
That's-
called. Let's do
that's-
this action.
They're not. The guy on the microphone is not saying anything except there is a bomb in this truck or something like that.
Yeah.
He's not even accusing anyone.
But you know, well, it's like such
Okay,
specific
I think
examples,
I think this is
and
a
I wanna
very
stay away
very
from
specific
No, I
example.
know, but I'm
and-
just
yeah,
saying
no,
that
that's fair.
it means that not like direct call to violence is
Like
not
if
the
you can
only
if you
thing.
can prove in a court of law that this person knew that there really wasn't a bomb, and that this person was purposely doing this because he knew that there were two sides there to incite violence, he did that with an intent, then I would say yes, you can probably charge him for
you're
something.
never gonna be able to prove that intent, right? He could be like, "Oh, I
Of
heard it,
of
or I
course.
thought I saw it."
And
Yes.
you don't even need two sides for it there to be violent. You can just have one protest, but because of such disturbance, people can die
Yeah.
due to such actions.
Yeah, so again, what your situation you're describing, I think it does incite violence, so that's why I'm leaning towards my conclusion. But in general, my personal belief is that your direct statements, like as long as they're not inciting violence, it's just your opinions, you're asking
Yeah, but-
questions, then you're allowed to say them.
Any controversial topics will incite violence. Free Palestine, when they say, you know, it's saying that it depicts that, you know, there is some land that was taken by the Jewish people. They say Free Palestine, people are saying that, okay, give that land back away. Okay, that's going to incite violence. So,
Or like river to the sea.
yeah,
Yeah,
right?
but
That's-
here's the thing. That's not inciting violence. That's literally
not.
it's trying to stop a violence that's happening. It's trying to stop an oppression
I
that's
agree.
happening.
I know,
that's
but
not
it's a
inciting
cycle.
violence.
It's a cycle. All I'm trying to say is
No,
that
so in one situation you have said there is a bomb. In another situation you have said, you know, free these people from the river.
No,
to
but
the sea.
from the other side, he's saying from, for example, an Israeli perspective, if I say river to the sea, it means that kill all the Israelis.
that's
and
what I
then-
meant.
And
That,
then
you know,
give
like-
all this land to Palestine.
Yeah,
So
but
in their perspective, that's what it is.
I'm not gonna touch that, but I don't think that's what that means.
Of course, it
I
doesn't.
I think most people don't think that.
That's exactly what it means. Again, all I'm trying to say is that we think we have freedom of speech. You guys were saying that, you know, it's in an ideal world, you can, it's, you know, it's a cornerstone of any democratic society, but it's like a car without an engine. I feel like when
Right.
it comes to freedom of speech, there's always going to be repercussions if you're significant enough, if you talk about a controversial topic, and that impacts your life.
Yeah, I think so. Because of such polarization in our society, probably because of social media, freedom of speech has become such a difficult thing now
Right.
to have. And I think if you see in the past all the technological advancement and all the social advancement that West has done, one of the cornerstone has been freedom of speech.
Right.
People have wanted to come here. People with, you know, good skill level, they have wanted to come here and contribute to this society because of freedom of speech. And we are seeing in the last few years we have been losing it one bit by one bit, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
It is a problem, 100%. Let's
Sorry,
talk.
I didn't get Anik's opinion because we were talking about opinions and Mo gave his.
Yeah,
About
Anik, you
Yeah,
skipped
again,
on.
I was saying that yes, and we in an ideal we try to think in an ideal world that it's freedom of speech is a means to publicly correct someone's views,
Mhm.
right? That should be used as a medium. That if someone has a difference of opinion, you use that platform to have a healthy debate.
Right.
But in a realistic world, there's never a healthy debate. And
That's our vision statement.
in topics that are controversial, any sort of freedom speech incites violence,
Okay.
right? And as an individual, I can always have repercussions. So that's why I think it's again the metaphor. It's a car without an engine.
Mhm.
I've been given a car that hey, you have a car,
Yeah.
but I can't really use it. So that's how I feel about it.
I think education has to go hand in hand with freedom of speech. If
Mhm.
the society, you're not educating the society well enough, then freedom of speech will lead to violence. If you're educating it in a way that it should be, then it shouldn't lead to violence. Even hate speech should lead to
But Canada, in terms of education, it's
No,
not-
but I'm saying that it's not the right education. It's such a polarized society, and that's the problem. That like need to do something about all the polarization that's happening with every issue. You take any issue, there's so much polarization. You cannot even listen to the other opinion
Yeah.
without being so, filled with hatred for the other side.
Right, but that's why I hold my view on freedom of speech, because I feel like our freedom of speech is being curtailed, and that in itself I think is leading to polarization, right? Because you're allowed to express one opinion, but you're not allowed to express the opposing opinion, and when you're not allowed to express the opposing opinion, people still have that opinion,
Mhm.
right? It's not like the opinion has gone away, you're just not allowed to express it. So those people that aren't allowed to express the opinion are now feel resentful, they feel bitter,
Exactly.
right?
Yes.
They feel that
the voices are not heard.
my voice is not heard. So if you feel like your voice is not heard, what are you going to do? Maybe you're going to protest, right? Maybe you're going.
Well,
You
the
are.
protest would be
Yeah.
the speech itself, which is not happening either. I think
Well,
what it's
protest-
doing is causing
No,
the
protests
build.
are still allowed. Like they're not stopping anything.
Yeah, but
They
once
are.
again,
What do you mean?
they
They are. Let's go to the protests that happened with the truckers, right? Do you know what happened with the truckers? We're all familiar with the trucker
Yeah,
protests, right?
yeah,
During the
yeah.
pandemic.
Yeah.
Now, a very controversial topic, okay? But the truckers, they were protesting over vaccine mandates, and that they didn't agree with it, right? Now, again, you know my opinion, but I believe that you should be able to be allowed to protest with this, right? But what happened was these people who expressed his opinion, their bank accounts were frozen, right? So their funds to anything that they had were frozen, and they could not go around living their lives anymore
Right.
because they chose to protest.
That's
right.
wrong. Yeah.
So that is a form of censoring your voice, and that's why people feel bitter, and that in itself, in my opinion, leads to polarization, right?
Mhm.
So unless we're able to hear all opinions, we will get a polarized society. But if we let the freedom of ideas help determine what we as a society believe, then we will have a healthy, non-polarized society. That's kind of what my belief system is.
Yeah, but that's okay. Your opinion of absolute free speech, it works in an idealistic world, like Mo mentioned, when there's people who are not going to become resentful or become I don't know how the nicer way of putting it, but like I guess resentful just from hearing my opinion about them, right? That causes that reaction that we don't want. But apart from that, in my perspective, we shouldn't have complete freedom of speech. There should be times where it's the idea of all publicity is good publicity, whether it's good or bad. There are certain topics that don't need to be talked about publicly.
Like what?
Even as an example of
Like what? Yeah.
okay, LGBTQ, right? Nothing wrong with the
No, are you talking about law, or are you just talking about?
I'm talking about just speaking about it publicly. I'm talking
No,
about
but like you're saying, it shouldn't be talked about like in terms of like a
Yeah.
law. Or
no, not as a law, but I'm just saying in
It
general.
shouldn't be talked about at all.
It shouldn't be like, for me, this is how I'm viewing it, and I'll explain my opinion, so I hope you stick around. But really.
Where would we go?
No, I'm just hoping for whoever's watching, but really,
You guys.
You
stick
guys.
around.
Here we go. Here's the
Stick
slippery slope now. Let's see.
really slippery slope. But look, it's one of those things where neither side needs to come out and say, "Listen to me," right? People who have that view that, you know what, I want to support homosexuality, or they are homosexual, you know, that's fine. But great, like, you know, I don't need to hear about it. I don't need to know about it the same way I don't need to know about what Mo does.
But what if those people are being
What have you been
discriminated
doing?
against?
Right.
Like, are they not supposed to
Yeah.
tell the society that, you know what, we are being
So
discriminated?
let me play the counter argument for you.
Right.
Okay. I am being discriminated against.
Okay.
Right. I need my voice to be heard,
Okay.
because if my voice is not heard, if people do not know about my way of life,
Mm-hmm.
I will continue to be discriminated against. I'm being discriminated against in terms of workplace, in terms of my friends and family, in terms of society when I go to any restaurant or something, right?
Right.
Because of my identity,
Mm-hmm.
people feel that they don't want to serve me. What do you say to that?
You're saying that
So-
you shouldn't be talking about it?
Yeah.
So then, if you take that away from LGBTQ and you look at other topics, then why is it that you can have one way or not another? Then
Like what?
the same. Go back to the Palestinian issue.
No, I don't get what you're saying.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying go back to the Palestinian issue. Those people are being discriminated against,
Yeah, so
right?
they can talk about it.
Yeah.
But they're not allowed to talk about it.
So look, here's the thing. If 100 people are talking about one issue and 2 people are not being allowed, you're saying you cannot talk about it. You can still talk about it. I know that it's not perfect. It's not full freedom of speech as you would like, but you can't say there is no freedom of speech in that issue. There is still freedom of speech.
Okay, but
And you're taking that issue and you're saying with LGBTQ that we shouldn't even talk about it.
so it comes down to 2 things. One thing I have against the way we talk about it, or the way there's being protest. If you look at some of these protests, they're quite shameless, right? They're actually now
Define shameless.
they're
Shameless is very subjective.
It's not very subjective in the
So
sense
that's
that when
freedom
there's
of
laws
expression.
there that prevent you to do certain things publicly,
Yeah.
why is it allowed in that protest?
No. Like
So yeah, you can.
Wait, like what?
So
Like
for
what?
example,
like
he's
nudity.
saying
Nudity.
Nudity.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, but that's not a freedom of speech.
That's
That's
a freedom of expression.
Yeah.
It's
But
part of
part
it.
of it, right?
Yeah.
but-
expressing your body, I guess.
Yeah.
Yes. So you gotta draw a
Uh,
line then.
Sure,
I
you
mean,
can draw
okay,
a
wait,
line.
but I do think there's a difference between freedom of like what you say
Mhm.
and freedom to wear what you want. I think those are 2 separate things. Don't
No, but I
is
think
that
what
not 2 separate things?
in those protests, what they're wearing is they're trying to express something, right? It's their
Right,
freedom
right,
of
right.
expression. But what he's
What-
saying that should they be allowed to do that, even though the law doesn't allow them, but in those protests they're allowed to do that.
So see,
So
that's
that-
a problem now.
So
for me,
basically, we're talking about the nudity law. Now.
Yeah.
Is that what we're talking
no,
about?
but here's the thing. Once again, you know, as somebody who's homosexual, nothing wrong with it.
What?
You
You're
can.
homosexual?
What are you talking? Wait, listen.
You said as somebody who's homosexual.
Okay, not somebody who's homosexual. I'm just saying in general, if somebody is homosexual, do you think they should still be allowed to protest in that way? And then, can I, as a person, at least protest that behavior, not the homosexuality aspect of it? Because then anybody could go do that. They could then break laws, or should they be allowed to break laws that are there that?
No, I don't think they should be allowed to protest.
Okay, so then, but
I
then
think they should be allowed to protest, but not in a way which breaks the law.
exactly. So that's the point.
But they've been
But the
allowed.
thing is, they've been allowed.
Wait,
And
what-
if I challenge even that, I am now a person who is, you know, whatever, homophobic.
But that's, I think, goes into censorship a little bit too.
Can you be more specific? What laws are they breaking?
Nudity.
Nudity. This is shit. Like, obviously, this is something that would not normally be allowed. Are you allowed to walk around like that normally?
Are you talking,
Even
about,
as a
the,
group
are you
of-
talking about the gay pride parade? Is that what you're talking
Well,
about?
100% yes.
Okay.
That's one of those.
Okay,
things.
I just want to be clear. Okay.
Yeah.
So if nudity is not allowed in our society, which is not, I agree with you. You shouldn't be able to
Yeah.
score on being nude.
Right.
But I do think that, you know, if they want to push the boundaries of nudity, then that's fine. Like
What do you mean push the boundaries of nudity?
like sexually provocative things, right? That's not against the law. You can in public have like close to nudity, but you can't have exact nudity, right?
Okay.
Right.
But
Right,
then
so
saying,
if they're doing
but
that,
we draw a
then-
line, right? We draw a line.
I draw the line wherever the law says it does, and which is public nudity.
Okay, but now
I
if
don't
I as an
support-
individual want to challenge that aspect of those protests,
100%, go ahead, challenge it.
but I can't
You can.
No, you can. There's so
Yeah.
many people who are.
Yeah. Okay. Let's be clear. Okay. You can challenge it.
Right.
There are repercussions that occur because certain corporations, particularly social media companies, will quite literally ban your account. Let's use
Right.
Twitter. Let's use Facebook.
Yeah.
Let's use Instagram.
Even though the
right?
people of those communities, they will be resentful towards me just because I'm saying, hey, don't do
No,
it.
but I
You
think
can
it's their right to be resentful. That's fine. Let them be resentful.
Why is it okay?
No,
is
it's
it
okay to be resentful.
100%.
Yeah,
As
no,
long
hold
as
on.
they're
Let's
not doing it.
clarify first. It's okay for them to be resentful if somebody tells them, hey, you can protest, but don't protest in this way because this is now breaking a law. Is that something they should be resentful of?
No, that's like you can have an argument with them, but they can still be resentful or
100%.
whatever they want.
I
But
think you have the
we
right to
said
do that.
earlier that anytime when you're breaching on someone's feelings, that should be not okay.
No, I was saying if you're doing something which will get a reaction, which will cause a law and order issue.
Right.
But this, it depends. If only I'm offending one person, then
But we are not offending just one person.
I know. But you have to know that if the reaction that would come is going to be a violent reaction or not.
I don't know if that, it's hard to judge that. Again, as I'm saying, humans are very emotions. In this case, I think, you can protest as long as you're not breaking the law. In that specific example, yes, they were breaking the law, but I think they were allowed or they had minor repercussions for breaking the law.
What was
Because,
the repercussions?
for example, there was some from the opposing side. They were saying that this is not right. You shouldn't be in this country that has a bit of
What was the repercussions from the authorities?
No, I'm saying the reason why they had very little to no repercussions is because it is, in Canada they are trying to promote that it's okay if you are homosexual.
Okay,
Right,
that's
so
fine, but you don't need to express it in that way. If I want to go promote me being straight, do I go and take my clothes off and do that?
Yeah,
I could do it in a very very.
Listen, but here's the thing: if you wanted to do that,
should I be
But you're
allowed
not
to
a
do that?
minority.
yeah,
You're not a
you can
minority.
go.
Well, if I'm an individual and I hold my own individual blues, I'm a very much a minority.
No, I'm saying the views of being not gay
Right.
is not minority. Minority is the people who are.
What if tomorrow I create my own view? Because it seems like you can do that now. Am I allowed to break laws to promote that view?
Again,
Not no one is advocating to break a law.
But that's what's happening though.
Right, but I think what's happening there is
Yeah.
that in not all of the parade, but in some of the parade, they are breaking a law which you're talking about, which is nudity,
Mhm.
right? And sure, they shouldn't do that. Now, what you're asking for is for law enforcement to go in and arrest these people mid parade, right? As a government, we have decided that we're not going to do that.
That's why we decided
And that's what you're against, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Right? Okay. So, but now let's frame a different picture. Let's frame the picture that there's no public nudity. There is pushing the law, right? Pushing the boundaries.
someone's painted their body, thinking
Or
okay,
something,
that's
Yeah, that's a good example.
They're not fully
Or yeah, you're just not fully nude. You're wearing the bare minimum of clothing that you could think of,
Yeah.
but you're still technically clothed. I think we all know basically your nipples are covered, right? Your nipples are covered and your ass is covered and your private parts are covered.
Right.
That's really all that you
That's
need
an
to do.
entirely different topic. We can have a conversation.
No,
about
that's
that
not
different.
because
Because
that's
you
not.
said that they should not even be allowed to protest.
No. I said they shouldn't be allowed to protest in that way. If they're doing and they were doing within the boundaries of the law,
No,
I can.
initially you said they should not even talk about
Yeah,
it.
you said there's certain topics in
You
freedom
should
of
not
speech
even
that
talk about it.
Because my frame of mind was that that's what's happening and that's the only way that they were talking about it because that's all I've heard and seen about it. If there's a way to protest or talk about it in a way that
No, of course there is. What do you
okay, but it's not happening that way.
No, of course it is. Those
Bro, I
parades
think-
happen once a year or something.
Yeah, and
all the other ones.
or
it's
even
not.
when that happens, if you look at the amount of parades that happen with nudity and without nudity, without nudity is gonna surpass with nudity.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Because what you're seeing online is that the nudity part, right? Because that's
Because the outrage comes in.
the
that's
outrage
the
comes
topic
in,
to talk about.
and
Mm.
that's honestly probably the most newsworthy stuff that's being focused on, right?
Okay, I stand
But-
corrected, but even
Yeah,
then,
but I don't know. Like, have you ever been to one of these parades? Have you publicly confirmed that, like, it's a line of nude people?
I have actually.
Yeah.
tell us your
not, but
experience,
I've
tell us
heard
your
it
I
from
was, I
festivals.
was I was in Vancouver with one of my friends, and yeah, we were just touring the downtown area, and the parade happened to be there, and you know I was with a male friend, so they thought that
You're part of
I
it.
was part of the
And how was your experience?
Um, again, like, it was interesting. It was an interesting experience to witness that, you know, like, again, people had flags, people had paints,
Yeah, like-
spray painted on the thing, but, you know, I didn't see anyone, like, fully nude there. Or it made me, like, extremely uncomfortable. I saw that, okay, there's a group of people that, in my view, are, in current society, are minority, right? And they're vocalizing what they think is right for them.
And it's okay.
Yeah, I think it's perfectly okay. I think it's a freedom of expression. As long as it
so
doesn't go
you,
against the
just
law.
to clarify, you're saying it's okay for them to be fully nude in public.
No,
we never said that.
Yeah, we
Okay.
never said that.
Sorry, I confused
Yeah.
it for a second because he was saying
I'm
he's
saying
been
it's
around.
okay.
No,
to-
again, I never said that I've been to an.
He's saying
I-
I never. He didn't
I never
even
ex-
see
yeah.
saw a fully nude.
He said he didn't even
person.
see a
Right,
nude person.
yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I said that's okay. I perfectly agree with that.
Yeah.
And I think protesting in such a way or having a parade in such a way is perfectly fine.
Mhm.
And in these cases, I'm not sure you know, but when you have a yearly parade like that, they do coordinate with law enforcement, right?
Yeah, you gotta take permits.
Yeah,
You know, you gotta
law
know
enforcement
about
is there for a reason, right? They've been told ahead of time that this is happening, so then they're there just to make sure that everything's okay. But
Yeah.
really, most of the time, law enforcement literally doesn't do anything because there's no need, because there is no violence there, there is no issues there because it's a publicly scheduled parade,
Mhm.
right? And they're doing their thing. Generally speaking, people are happy during
And
the
if
parade.
there's like 1,000 people and 10 of them are even like nude, the law enforcement is probably not going to do anything.
Exactly,
there
yeah.
because it's probably going to create more issue than
Like-
solving the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Like
Sorry,
when
just
you're
to
law
clarify a
enforcement,
little further onto that, they have permits and approvals for these parades, and if every single person there was nude, would anything happen about it?
I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
if the
think so.
majority
I think
is
so.
breaking the law, then I think yeah.
But
For example, I'll give
from
you-
what I
I'll
heard,
give
and
you
this
an
was
example.
secondhand.
I'll give you an
I
example.
know where you're going with this. By the way, you're saying if there's a minority breaking the law, you're not going to punish them. But if there's a majority breaking the law, why do you punish them? That's what you're saying.
But
Mm.
yeah, but usually that's what happens.
Yeah, but I think,
No, but he's-
for example,
he's
in
to
the
save the
in the
minorities.
Palestinian protest that's happening right now, in every protest there is at least a few people who have these placards which are extremely violent,
Play cards.
or like whatever posters they
display
have,
posters.
Oh, okay, I see.
They're extremely violent. Does that mean that those people represent the whole protest? No, they don't. Does that mean police should come and start arresting those people? No, like they shouldn't. I'm just saying that if a few people are doing something in a big protest, that doesn't mean that the entire
Yeah,
protest
the
is
entire
about that.
protest is. And similarly, let's say you're driving.
Yeah.
Majority of the people are like speeding, which they generally are, right? But minority of people are not, right?
Yeah.
So what? Cops don't go around arresting people based off like if they're going 120 kilometers an hour. They arrest people based off excessive speeds out of the ordinary, because that particular speed can cause crashes, right? It's not that if everyone's going the same speed, nothing's going to happen.
Mhm.
So they're not going to try to stop people if they're going like 120, right?
Right.
So similar, like basically in this case, police officers, they know what can cause violence or what can cause unrest, right? So those things they target, right? But as Mo was saying, like if it's a minority people doing certain things, it's not going to cause unrest. It's not going to cause violence, and they know this by experience, right? And they are making their best judgment on that case. So they're not going to go out of their way to do it. If that person comes up to them and starts like, dancing around them or something, and then they don't, then I agree with you, then they probably should be doing something about it. But if they're in the middle of the protest, I wouldn't expect the law enforcement to go run into the middle of the parade, find that person, pull them out, yank them to the side, be like, how dare you? I wouldn't expect that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you would expect that, but I wouldn't expect that.
I mean, I guess if it's okay to push the law a little bit, then if that's what society decides, then it's okay.
Yeah. I think that's where we can have the closing comments
Yeah.
regarding this.
Sorry, I
topic.
do have one
Go for
thing that I did want to touch on, which I think is very important,
it.
which is we talk about freedom of speech in the West. What about freedom of speech in non-Western countries like let's use Russia, let's use
Yeah, and it's not. So I was actually looking into it. Not all the countries have that right to have the freedom of speech.
yeah.
Like most countries probably don't.
No. Actually, most countries do, but countries that have communism, fascism.
No, I think
you
you're
know,
saying by law most countries do. I'm saying in reality most countries probably
But
don't.
I am still of the opinion that even in Canada, if you are influential enough and you talk about a controversial topic, you don't really have freedom of speech.
No, I
because
think-
it will have repercussions.
I think
Right, but I think we all agree that we have more freedom of speech than
I think
Let's-
Yeah, there's actually a scale that.
yeah. There's a freedom of speech index. Actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
index and like they rank countries.
Right.
There's a lot of countries that rank low in it because of repercussions
Right.
for common people.
Yeah, I think and it directly impacts the society as a whole. Like if you were a university graduate who's smart, who has ideas and who wants to give back to the society, and you're living in a society which doesn't allow freedom of speech, which doesn't give you the liberty that you want, you're most likely not going to contribute in that society, whatever skill set that you might have.
Yeah.
And I think that really impacts the society as a whole.
Yeah, I think it's a good medium to have, or it's one of the reasons why people generally tend to immigrate to the Western
Right.
world, because the index suggests that the freedom of speech will have minor repercussions.
Right.
Right. Whereas in the other areas where the index is low, people generally don't tend to go there.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think go ahead.
No. I was just gonna, because we mentioned the freedom of speech index, which I pulled up. I want you guys to try and guess who are in fact, stop looking.
I can.
Yeah, stop looking here.
Yeah.
What would you guys guess are the, let's say, top 10 nations in
Netherlands.
freedom of speech?
Scandinavian countries.
Scandinavian.
I'd say Belgium, maybe.
You probably saw it.
No, I just
Yeah, you probably saw it.
yeah, Belgium I think
Yeah.
would be, because I mean, for me, Belgium's not really in the. When I go world news, there's barely anything about it. I still like to go there.
Yeah, I think Scandinavian 3 countries are probably at the top.
Yeah. What about the low?
I will tell you the law, but let's hear Harun's opinion on who you think would be top there.
Lowest
I'd
is
say
probably
Scandinavian.
I
Cuba.
don't know. He's
Cuba.
saying he's still asking. So, what do you think is the top?
Like, you want an individual country?
Sure.
I said Netherlands, but I could be
Netherlands.
probably off. But I said Scandinavian. Sorry, not Netherlands, not Scandinavian. It's
Okay.
Norway.
Norway,
Yeah.
Norway. That's what I meant.
Okay, so just so we can know the top 10, okay? So the top nation, this is 2022 data, okay? Is Denmark. They have a freedom of speech index of 0.99, so it's
Right.
almost 100. Then it's Switzerland, then Ireland, then Norway, Belgium, Estonia, Sweden, Finland, Luxembourg, France, Slovakia.
France, really interesting.
Yeah.
But I think it's also.
And somehow Canada is like, I think this is like 11 or 12.
But it would be also interesting to see, like in the top 4 or 5 countries, what is the mix of population?
Right.
If it's just dominant
One group.
one group, then
Of course,
you
yeah.
wouldn't expect to have.
And that's a good point, because generally speaking, all of these countries that I mentioned have a very homogeneous society,
Right.
And that's a very good point. With I
Yeah,
think the exception of
polarization
when we get to
happens.
Canada,
Yeah.
which I think if I'm counting right is like 12 or 13 here.
And it's still above, I think, New Zealand, Australia.
Yeah, it's above New
Yeah,
Zealand,
and,
Germany,
and given
America.
the
Yeah.
diversity we have in Canada, I think it's a very good
Yeah.
score.
Yeah. I think it's a very good score. I think our society still has a lot of major flaws in terms of,
Of course,
freedom of
100%. I
speech.
think if you look
Um,
at like you were talking about the First Amendment, when it was penned down like 400 years ago, if you look at that constitution, US was like 300 years ahead of its time. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
sad
yeah.
to see how those values of freedom of speech, we're losing time, in this time when we shouldn't be.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. 100%.
What about the lowest?
Yeah, let's check the lowest. That's going to be really interesting. Okay, stop looking, Mo.
Okay, North Korea.
You know?
Well, obviously that's an obvious one.
Okay. Besides,
I think North Korea, probably Cuba.
I think, yeah, I think-
Russia.
Yeah, Russia maybe. No, I don't know. Actually, no.
I don't think Russia has. From the interaction I had with the Russian guy, it didn't seem like they had a problem with freedom of speech.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
like
actually curious.
over
Who are
here,
the
yeah.
bottom
No,
five?
this guy was met me somewhere else, but he
Who
was
are the
from
bottom
Russia.
five?
Yeah, Russia.
wait, everyone has to guess. Okay, pick 3 countries.
Okay, bro. North Korea, Russia, and Cuba.
Okay.
I'd say North Korea. Maybe like an African country.
You gotta name a country. You can't, Africa is a
That's
whole
a-
I
continent.
know. I'm gonna say Libya.
Maybe South.
Okay,
Arabia.
Africa, Libya.
Yeah.
And I'd say China.
Africa, Libya, China. Okay, and Harun?
Yeah, I'm gonna say China, Saudi Arabia, and maybe like one of those Oriental countries. I think it's Indonesia or Philippines.
Really?
Mm.
Indonesia
No.
is
Oh,
like probably.
no way.
Oh,
never.
oh,
Indonesia is
oh.
Really?
like a democracy.
Yeah, Indonesia is democracy. I'm
Okay.
pretty sure they had a
So what is the
female
answer?
president.
Yeah.
Okay, number 1, North Korea.
Yeah.
Number
Oh, Iran.
Oh, yeah.
Is it Iran?
Iran hasn't showed up yet.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
Okay.
Number 2, Laos.
I don't
Number
know
2
that
worst.
country.
Okay, not number 2 best, number 2 worst. Number 3, Syria. Number 4, Turkmenistan. Number 5, Belarus. Number 6, Eritrea. Number 7, China.
Mm.
Number 8, Qatar. Number 9, Myanmar. Number 10, United Arab Emirates.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
But I think this is 2022. They must
Yeah.
have changed their perception a lot since.
This is 2022.
yeah.
11th is Cuba. 12th, Saudi Arabia. You guys, I don't know why no one said Saudi Arabia.
He
Oh,
did
he
it.
did.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But I thought it was
Uh,
like top two.
13 is Afghanistan. I don't see any of the countries that here. You guys can see this is like
Really,
well,
Russia?
yeah, Russia's not here. Like
Oh, okay. Oh, it's right
there.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, I think what's missing from this data is the percent of diversity.
No, but
Um,
even in the worst one, it's not a very diverse country. They're
Like
very-
China's not
no,
diverse.
yeah, true.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. I think a lot of these
It's just
countries.
a lot of kingships or
Yeah, they're all dictatorships
authoritarian
and stuff.
regimes.
And actually, a lot of these are homogenous societies.
Yeah, most
So-
of them.
Yeah. So your argument initially about homogenous societies have more easier access to freedom of speech, it's kind of moot because a lot of these.
I think
Countries
homogenous
are
societies have
homogenous.
less internal problems, like the problems we
Right,
have.
but I think
But freedom of
with-
speech can be something.
What he was saying with democracies, it's easier in homogeneous societies. But these most of them
yeah.
are not.
I mean, I agree that they're
homogeneous.
easier.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's fair.
because
100%.
polarization is not as much.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Of course, you have less polarization.
Closing comments?
Yeah, for sure. Closing comments, at least for me, would be freedom of speech is a very complicated topic. Obviously, we have very different opinions here. I think it's a value that I hold dear to my heart. I think it's very important for people in Western democracies to protect it vehemently. I think in general we all kind of feel like that, but overall, I don't know. Do you guys have a closing comment yourself? That would be my closing comment.
No, I agree. I think we are losing ground on freedom of speech, especially last 5-7 years.
Yeah.
And we have come thus far because of freedom of speech and freedom of expression and freedom of ideas, and we need to fight it as much as we can to keep our freedom.
Yeah, I think, I'm a proud Canadian. I think Canada's done a very good job at allowing multiple groups to express their likes and dislikes. However, there's still a lot of improvement. I think currently, freedom of speech, just, it's there. However, be prepared to have repercussions if you are influential.
All right, finally, Arun.
Yeah, no, I agree with the guys. I think, generally speaking. I'm just gonna leave it at that. I'm not
Generally speaking. All right. Generally speaking.
you know.
Generally speaking, Haroon
I'm gonna reserve my
appreciates freedom
comments.
of speech. Okay, generally speaking.
Yeah.
And at Lens of Morality, generally speaking, we do appreciate freedom of speech. So with that, I'd like to say thank you for listening and have a great day.
All right.